Everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We always love to get our hands dirty with some fascinating biology. And today we're going to be talking about something we all do every day, but probably don't think about too much: excretion.
That's right.
We actually got a really interesting research paper from one of our listeners about human excretion. So I figured, why not expand on that and explore how animals across the entire kingdom deal with getting rid of waste?
It's a really fundamental process for survival.
Yeah.
And it shows off the amazing diversity of life on this planet.
Absolutely.
It's not just about getting rid of stuff. It's a really finely tuned process that has evolved in some pretty incredible ways.
Well, let's dive right in then. What exactly are we talking about when we say waste? I mean, obviously, we all know what pee and poop is.
Right.
But what's the biological story there?
So as our bodies and the bodies of all animals break down food to fuel their cells, there are inevitably byproducts.
Right.
Some of those are useful, but others are toxic and need to be eliminated. And those are what we call nitrogenous wastes.
Nitrogenous waste. Sounds kind of intense.
It can be. And there are actually different types, each with varying levels of toxicity.
Yeah.
The most common ones you'll see are ammonia, urea, and uric acid.
Okay, so three main types. Why don't we start with ammonia? That seems like it would be the simplest one, right?
You're right, it is. Ammonia is actually the most toxic, but it's very easily dissolved in water, and that's why a lot of aquatic animals like fish can just excrete it directly into their surroundings.
That makes sense. Water is everywhere for them. So diluting and getting rid of that ammonia is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But what about land animals? We can't go around dripping ammonia everywhere.
Exactly. For terrestrial animals, water conservation is critical, and that's where urea comes in. It's less toxic than ammonia, so it can be excreted in a more concentrated form, saving water.
Right.
Mammals, including us humans, mainly excrete urea.
Okay.
And actually, your research paper focused on human excretion, so that connection is pretty neat.
Yeah, it is. So we're team urea.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there's an even more water-efficient option. What was it again? Uric acid, right?
That's right. Uric acid is the least toxic of the three, and it can be excreted as a semi-solid paste, so it minimizes water loss even further.
Okay.
Birds and reptiles use this method, which is why their droppings have that white pasty part.
Ah.
That's the uric acid.
So it's all about adapting to the environment.
Yeah.
Aquatic animals can afford to excrete toxic ammonia directly, but land animals need to conserve water, so they've evolved to produce less toxic but more complex waste products. That's fascinating.
It really is. And it's not just the type of waste that's adapted. The organs themselves have evolved in all sorts of interesting ways, too.
Oh, wow.
For instance, flatworms have simple tubes called protonephridia,
Okay.
while earthworms have something called nephridia.
Okay.
Then you have insects with Malpighian tubules, crustaceans with green glands, and of course, vertebrates like us with kidneys.
Hold on. A whole world of animal plumbing beyond kidneys. I'm intrigued, but let's bring it back to humans for now. You mentioned kidneys, but our excretory system involves more than just those, right?
Right. It's a whole system working together. We have the kidneys, of course, but there are also the ureters, which transport urine from the kidneys to the bladder where it's stored.
Okay.
And finally, the urethra, the tube that carries urine out of the body.
All right, so it is a coordinated plumbing system.
Yeah.
But tell me more about those superstar kidneys. How do they actually work?
So picture two bean-shaped organs, each about the size of your fist, tucked away on either side of your spine.
Okay.
Those are your kidneys, and they're constantly filtering your blood.
Filtering our blood. That sounds intense.
It is. Each kidney has about 1 million tiny filters called nephrons.
Wow.
And those are the real workhorses here. They filter waste products and produce urine.
Okay, 1 million filters per kidney. That's some serious filtration power.
And get this, those kidneys filter around 180 liters of fluid every single day.
180 liters, whoa. But we definitely don't pee out that much liquid. What happens to all that extra fluid?
That's where the brilliance of those nephrons really comes into play. That initial filtration produces a large volume of what we call filtrate.
Oh,
But then a remarkable thing happens, reabsorption.
Reabsorption. So we recycle some of that fluid?
Exactly. About 99% of the filtrate is reabsorbed back into the bloodstream.
Wow.
This makes sure that we don't lose essential nutrients in water along with the waste products. It's incredibly efficient.
That's amazing. Okay, so kidneys filter and they reabsorb. But how does all of this actually happen inside those tiny nephrons? Ready to take a closer look.
Let's take a journey through the nephron then, shall we?
Lead the way. I'm ready to explore.
Our journey starts at the Bowman's capsule, a cup-like structure that surrounds a cluster of capillaries called the glomerulus.
Okay.
This is where the initial filtration happens, driven by blood pressure. The pressure forces water and small molecules from the blood into the Bowman's capsule, creating what we call filtrate.
Okay, so filtrate formed. What's next on our nephron adventure?
From the Bowman's capsule, the filtrate flows into the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT.
Okay.
This is where the bulk of that reabsorption happens. Think of it like a bustling marketplace where valuable substances like glucose, amino acids, and electrolytes are reclaimed from the filtrate.
So the PCT is like a recycling center, making sure nothing important goes to waste.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Next, we enter the loop of Henle,
Okay.
which is a hairpin-shaped loop that dips down into the medulla of the kidney. This is where it gets really interesting. This unique shape is actually key to its function because it creates a concentration gradient within the kidney. That gradient is crucial for concentrating urine and conserving water.
Okay, but how does a loop create a concentration gradient? This is where I need my hand held a little.
Okay, so imagine a long hallway with a heater at one end and an air conditioner at the other. The air gets progressively warmer as you move towards the heater and cooler as you approach the air conditioner, right?
Right, that makes sense. But how does that relate to the loop of Henle?
The two limbs of the loop, the descending and ascending limbs, have different permeability to water and electrolytes.
Okay.
This difference, combined with the countercurrent flow of fluid through the loop, creates a concentration gradient, just like the temperature gradient in our hallway.
I'm starting to see how this loop is so clever, but I'm still not quite clear on the purpose of the concentration gradient. Why is it so important?
It all comes down to water conservation. The gradient allows water to be reabsorbed from the filtrate as it passes through the collecting duct, which runs alongside the loop of Henle.
Okay.
The more concentrated the surrounding tissue, the more water can be drawn out, leading to more concentrated urine.
So the loop of Henle is like a water extraction machine.
Right.
It's incredible how much our bodies do without us realizing it. Where does the filtrate go after the loop of Henle?
After the loop of Henle, it enters the distal convoluted tubule, or DCT.
Okay.
This is where the fine-tuning of electrolyte balance and pH regulation happen. The DCT makes sure everything is just right before moving on.
Wow, the DCT seems to have a lot of fine-tuning to do. Why is that so important?
Think of it this way. Your body needs to maintain a very specific balance of electrolytes and pH in order to function correctly.
Right.
Too much or too little of certain substances can throw things off and lead to problems.
So the DCT is like the final quality control check,
Yeah,
making sure everything is just right before the filtrate moves on to its final destination.
exactly. From the DCT, the filtrate flows into the collecting duct.
So this is where it all comes together.
Yeah.
What happens in the collecting duct?
Remember that concentration gradient created by the loop of Henle?
Yes.
Well, the collecting duct is the conduit through which the filtrate, now refined and modified, travels through that gradient.
Okay.
As the filtrate travels down, the collecting duct water can be reabsorbed depending on how permeable the duct is.
Okay, so the permeability of the collecting duct determines how much water is reabsorbed and how concentrated the urine becomes. But what controls that permeability?
Yeah.
How does our body know how much water to conserve?
That's where hormones enter the picture. Hormones play a crucial role in regulating kidney function.
Hormones. So our endocrine system is calling the shots here.
It is. Hormones act like messengers telling the kidneys how much water to reabsorb. One of the key players here is antidiuretic hormone, or ADH.
Okay.
If you're dehydrated, your body releases more ADH, making the collecting duct more permeable to water, so you produce less urine and conserve more water.
It's amazing how our body has its own internal thermostat for water balance. I never realized how complex this whole process is. What other hormones are involved in regulating kidney function?
There are a few others, but let's focus on the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. This system also plays a crucial role in maintaining blood pressure, which is directly tied to kidney function.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this system and how it affects the kidneys.
Well, if your blood pressure drops too low, the kidneys release renin.
Okay.
This triggers a cascade of events leading to the production of angiotensin II, which is a powerful vasoconstrictor.
Vasoconstrictor. That means it tightens the blood vessels, raising blood pressure.
Right, exactly. And angiotensin II also stimulates the release of aldosterone from the adrenal glands.
Okay.
Aldosterone promotes sodium and water reabsorption in the kidneys, further increasing blood volume and pressure.
So renin and aldosterone work together to raise blood pressure. What a sophisticated system.
Yeah.
But we've been focusing on the kidneys for a while now. You mentioned other organs involved in excretion too, right? What are those?
You're right, it's not just the kidneys. Our lungs play a crucial role in excreting carbon dioxide and water vapor.
Of course, every breath we exhale is getting rid of waste products.
Yeah.
What about the liver? What role does it play in excretion?
The liver is a real multitasker.
Yeah.
It's actually involved in so many different processes, but in terms of excretion, it's a detoxification powerhouse.
Okay.
It breaks down harmful substances like drugs and alcohol and processes waste products for elimination in bile.
Bile. Isn't that involved in digestion?
It is. It's produced in the liver and stored in the gallbladder, then released into the small intestine to help digest fats. But it also carries waste products that are ultimately eliminated in feces.
So even pooping is part of the excretory process.
Yeah.
And what about the skin? You mentioned that it excretes waste through sweat, right?
Yes. Sweat is mostly water, but it also contains small amounts of salts, urea, and other metabolic waste products. So even when we're not actively exercising, our skin is still excreting waste.
Wow, it really is a whole body effort. Our bodies are constantly working to get rid of waste even when we don't realize it. This is a remarkable system.
It truly is. It really highlights how interconnected all of our organ systems are. They all work together to keep us alive and functioning.
I'm already looking at my own body in a whole new light after learning all this. But let's not forget that you mentioned some pretty serious things that can go wrong with this finely tuned excretory system. What were those again?
Well, we briefly touched on kidney stones earlier, but those are just one example. Kidney stones form when mineral deposits build up in the kidneys, and they can be incredibly painful.
Ouch, I can only imagine. What are some other conditions that can affect the excretory system?
Glomerulonephritis is another one. It's an inflammation of the glomeruli, those tiny filters in the nephrons.
Right.
This can lead to kidney damage and even kidney failure.
Kidney failure. That sounds terrifying. What causes glomerulonephritis?
There are a few different causes, including infections, autoimmune diseases, and even certain medications.
Okay.
It's a serious condition, but thankfully there are treatments available.
That's good to know. What kind of treatments are there for kidney problems?
Well, one option is hemodialysis, which uses a machine to filter the blood when the kidneys can't do their job. It's a life-saving treatment for people with kidney failure.
Hemodialysis sounds like a tough process. What are some of the challenges people face?
It can be quite disruptive to a person's life,
Yeah.
requiring regular sessions, often several times a week. There are also potential risks and side effects associated with the procedure.
I see what you mean. It sounds like preventing kidney problems in the first place is crucial.
Absolutely. Early detection and treatment are key. Regular checkups, maintaining a healthy weight, and staying hydrated are all important steps in keeping those kidneys happy and healthy.
Great advice. Well, my mind is officially buzzing with new knowledge about this amazing excretory system. It's incredible how something we do every day without even thinking about it is actually so complex and vital to our survival.
I completely agree. It's a testament to the incredible design of our bodies and the intricate ways in which different systems work together to keep us alive.
Before we get too carried away with all this amazing information, let's take a moment to let it all sink in. When we come back, we'll continue our deep dive into the excretory system and explore some even more fascinating aspects of this essential biological process.
Welcome back. Glad you stuck around. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to explore.
I know, right? It's amazing how something we do every day without even thinking about it turns out to be so complex and fascinating. We already learned so much about the human excretory system, but I'm curious to learn more about those fascinating adaptations you mentioned in other animals.
Absolutely. And it's actually a great segue because your research paper on human excretion got me thinking about how the different types of nitrogenous waste are linked to an animal's environment
Okay.
and how this connection has huge implications for the evolution of life on Earth.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How so?
Well, for the first few billion years of life on Earth, everything lived in the water, right? And as we discussed, aquatic animals can easily excrete ammonia directly into their surroundings because it's so soluble in water.
Right. No need to convert it into less toxic forms like urea or uric acid.
Exactly. But then life began to colonize land. This presented a major challenge in terms of excretion.
That makes sense. Land animals can't just release ammonia into the air. It's a gas, and it would be highly toxic. Plus, they need to conserve water.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So as animals transitioned from water to land, their excretory systems had to adapt.
Okay.
They needed ways to get rid of nitrogenous waste without losing too much precious water.
Right.
That's where the evolution of urea and uric acid comes in.
Okay.
Those less toxic forms allowed animals to conserve water and thrive in terrestrial environments.
So essentially, something as seemingly mundane as peeing played a pivotal role in the history of life on Earth. That's incredible.
It is, and it highlights how interconnected different aspects of biology are. Excretion, evolution, adaptation, it all comes together.
I love how this deep dive is connecting all these different dots. It's like we're seeing the bigger picture of biology unfold right before our eyes. But let's go back to those amazing kidneys for a moment. You mentioned something called the glomerular filtration rate, or GFR. Can you remind me what that is?
Of course. GFR is a measure of how much blood the kidneys filter per minute. It's a key indicator of kidney function, and it's a pretty impressive number. Remember how we talked about those kidneys filtering whopping 180 liters of fluid each day?
Right, 180 liters. But we obviously don't pee out that much liquid. Most of that filtrate is reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. So how does GFR fit into all of this?
GFR tells us how much fluid is initially filtered out of the blood.
Okay.
A higher GFR generally means the kidneys are filtering more blood, but there's a catch. If it's too high, it could mean they aren't reabsorbing enough fluid, which could lead to dehydration. On the other hand, if it's too low, it might mean they aren't filtering waste products efficiently enough.
So it's all about finding that balance, that optimal GFR that keeps everything running smoothly. How does our body regulate this?
Remember that renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system we talked about earlier, the one that kicks in when blood pressure is low?
Yes, the one that raises blood pressure.
Well, that system also plays a vital role in regulating GFR. When blood pressure drops, the kidneys release renin, which triggers that cascade of events leading to angiotensin II, that powerful vasoconstrictor.
Right. Angiotensin II tightens those blood vessels, raising blood pressure. But how does it affect GFR?
Angiotensin II also constricts the efferent arterioles, those tiny blood vessels that carry blood away from the glomerulus, increasing the pressure inside.
So it's squeezing those exit pathways, which forces more fluid through the filters.
Exactly. That's how the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system helps maintain GFR even when blood pressure is low. It's a brilliant adaptation to keep the kidneys working efficiently.
Okay, so we've got this intricate feedback system regulating GFR and keeping everything balanced. That makes sense. Let's zoom back in on those nephrons for a second. We covered the Bowman's capsule, the PCT, the loop of Henle, and the DCT. But where does that filtrate go after all that processing and refining into DCT?
The final destination. The collecting duct. It's that long tube running through the medulla of the kidney, right through that concentration gradient we talked about earlier.
Right, the one created by the loop of Henle that allows for water reabsorption and the production of concentrated urine.
Precisely. The collecting duct acts as the conduit for the now refined filtrate.
It's like the final stretch of the journey, so what happens there?
As the filtrate travels down, the collecting duct water can be reabsorbed depending on the permeability of the duct. And that permeability is controlled by a hormone we discussed earlier, ADH.
Yes, ADH. The one that tells the kidneys how much water to conserve.
That's the one. ADH acts on the collecting duct, making it more or less permeable to water depending on the body's needs.
So the collecting duct is like a water conservation valve controlled by ADH. It all ties together so perfectly.
It really does. It's this delicate balance between filtration, reabsorption, and hormonal regulation that allows our kidneys to do their jobs so well, keeping our body in that sweet spot of homeostasis.
This has been absolutely fascinating, but I have to admit there's something a bit unappealing about discussing urine.
I understand. It's not exactly dinner table conversation, but remember, urine is a valuable source of information about our health.
Oh, right. Like those urine tests doctors sometimes order.
Exactly. Doctors can analyze urine to detect all sorts of conditions, from urinary tract infections to kidney disease to diabetes.
So it's like a window into our internal workings.
Precisely. The color, odor, and composition of urine can reveal a lot about what's going on inside our bodies. If the urine is very dark yellow, for instance, it could be a sign of dehydration. And speaking of urine tests, they're a great example of why early detection and treatment are so important for kidney health.
It's all connected. We've been talking so much about kidneys, though, and I'm curious to circle back to those other organs we mentioned earlier, the lungs, the liver, and the skin. What are their supporting roles in all of this?
You're right. They may not be the stars of the show, like the kidneys.
Right.
But they are vital members of the team. The lungs, as we discussed, are constantly excreting carbon dioxide, a waste product of cellular respiration. The liver acts as a detoxification powerhouse, breaking down harmful substances and processing waste products for elimination in bile.
So even pooping is part of the excretory process. And what about the skin?
The skin helps eliminate small amounts of metabolic waste, salts, and water through sweat. Even when you're not actively exercising, your skin is constantly excreting waste.
It's incredible how much our body does behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly. But what about when things don't go so smoothly? We briefly discussed kidney stones and glomerulonephritis, but are there other disorders that can affect the excretory system?
There are, unfortunately. One that's incredibly common, especially in women, is a urinary tract infection, or UTI. This happens when bacteria enter the urethra and travel up to the bladder, causing inflammation and pain.
Ouch. UTIs sound pretty unpleasant.
They can be, and if left untreated, they can spread to the kidneys and cause more serious problems.
So it's important to see a doctor if you're experiencing any kind of urinary problems.
Absolutely. Early detection and treatment are key. Another common disorder is incontinence, which is the inability to control urination.
That sounds distressing. What causes incontinence?
There are a few different causes, including weakened pelvic floor muscles, nerve damage, and certain medications.
Okay.
It can affect people of all ages, but it's more common in older adults.
We've been focusing on the human excretory system for a while now, and I'd love to circle back to the animal kingdom. You mentioned some fascinating excretory adaptations out there. Can you give us some examples?
Of course. One of my favorite examples is the Malpighian tubule system found in insects.
Oh,
Imagine long, thin tubes extending into the insect's body cavity. They absorb waste products from the hemolymph, which is basically the insect equivalent of blood.
so it's like an internal filtering system.
Exactly. The Malpighian tubules filter those waste products and transport them to the hindgut, where they're excreted along with feces.
That's ingenious. What about aquatic animals? We talked about how they can simply excrete ammonia directly into the water, but are there any other interesting adaptations?
Absolutely. Freshwater fish face a unique challenge.
Oh, yeah.
They're constantly absorbing water from their surroundings.
Why is that a challenge? I thought having plenty of water would be a good thing.
It is to a point, but too much water can be a problem. If freshwater fish didn't have mechanisms to get rid of excess water, their cells would swell up and burst.
Oh, I see. So they need ways to excrete water without losing too many salts. How do they manage that?
They've evolved specialized kidneys that produce large volumes of very dilute urine, and their gills actively uptake salts from the surrounding water.
So it's a constant balancing act for them, regulating both water and salt levels.
It is, and that's just one example of the amazing diversity of excretory adaptations we find in the animal kingdom.
It's mind-boggling to think about all the different ways animals have solved this fundamental challenge of getting rid of waste. What can we learn from studying these diverse excretory systems?
By studying other animals, we gain insights into the evolution of these systems and the fundamental principles that govern them.
So it's like comparative biology, looking for patterns and connections across different species.
Exactly. And by understanding how other animals solve this challenge, we can potentially develop new approaches to treating human excretory disorders.
So it's not just about pure knowledge. There are potential applications in medicine and biotechnology as well.
Precisely. Research on the Malpighian tubule system, in insects, for example, has provided insights into how we might develop more efficient artificial kidneys.
That's incredible. Studying animal poop could lead to breakthroughs in human health. Who knew?
It really is amazing what we can learn from the natural world, even from the most seemingly mundane things.
Well, I don't think I'll ever look at pee or poop the same way again. But in all seriousness, it's remarkable to learn about the incredible diversity of life on Earth and the amazing adaptations that allow animals to thrive in so many different environments.
I completely agree. And it's a good reminder that we're all connected in some way, sharing this planet and facing similar challenges.
Speaking of challenges, what about those times when things go wrong in the human excretory system? We've talked about a few disorders already, but are there others we should be aware of?
There are, unfortunately. One condition that's becoming increasingly common is chronic kidney disease. It affects millions of people worldwide and is often linked to lifestyle factors like diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity.
That's concerning. It sounds like taking care of our kidneys is more important than ever.
It absolutely is. Staying hydrated, eating a balanced diet, getting regular exercise, and maintaining a healthy weight can all help protect our kidneys and reduce the risk of developing chronic kidney disease.
Those are great reminders for all of us. And of course, regular checkups with the doctor are essential, especially if you have any risk factors for kidney disease.
Exactly. Early detection and treatment can make a huge difference in slowing the progression of the disease and preventing complications.
So we've talked about the importance of kidney health and the steps we can take to protect these vital organs. But what about those situations where kidney function is severely impaired or lost altogether? We mentioned hemodialysis earlier, but are there other options?
You're right. Hemodialysis is a life-saving treatment for people with end-stage renal disease.
Right.
But it's not a cure. It requires those regular sessions, often several times a week, and it can be a real disruption to someone's life.
It sounds like a challenging process.
It can be, and that's why kidney transplantation is often considered the best long-term solution for people with end-stage renal disease.
But finding a compatible donor can be difficult, right?
It can be. There's a constant shortage of donor organs, but there are ongoing efforts to improve organ donation rates and develop new technologies like bioartificial kidneys that could someday eliminate the need for transplantation altogether.
Wow, that would be a game changer. So there's hope for the future, even for people facing serious kidney problems. It's amazing to think about how far medical science has come.
It is, and it's exciting to think about what the future holds.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. From the intricacies of the human excretory system to the remarkable adaptations of animals around the world, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of excretion.
We've certainly covered a lot. I hope you've come away with a newfound appreciation for this essential process.
I definitely have, and I'm feeling quite grateful for my own hardworking kidneys after learning all this.
Me too. They definitely deserve a round of applause.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Remember, stay hydrated, take care of those kidneys, and keep exploring the wonders of biology. We'll be right back after a short break. We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of excretion.
It's been quite a journey. We've explored nephrons, delved into the complexities of hormonal regulation, and even taken a look at the unique adaptations of animals from across the animal kingdom.
It really has been a wild ride. We've learned so much. But before we go, I'd love to connect all of this back to the bigger picture. What does all this knowledge about excretion really mean for us as humans, living in the 21st century?
That's a great question. I think one of the most important takeaways is just how remarkable our kidneys are. They work tirelessly behind the scenes, keeping us alive and healthy.
They really are the unsung heroes of our bodies. They filter waste, regulate fluids, and maintain that delicate balance we call homeostasis.
Exactly. And yet we often take them for granted until something goes wrong.
That's so true. And as we've discussed, there are so many things that can go wrong, from common issues like kidney stones and UTIs to more serious conditions like chronic kidney disease, which affects millions of people worldwide.
Unfortunately, you're right. Chronic kidney disease is on the rise, often linked to lifestyle factors like diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity.
So it seems like taking care of our kidneys and making healthy choices is more crucial than ever.
Absolutely. Staying hydrated, eating a balanced diet, and getting regular exercise can go a long way in protecting our kidneys and reducing the risk of developing chronic kidney disease.
Great advice. And of course, regular checkups with a doctor are essential, especially if you have any risk factors for kidney disease.
I completely agree. Early detection and treatment can make a world of difference. It can slow the progression of the disease and help prevent potentially serious complications.
That makes sense. We've talked about the importance of kidney health, but what happens when kidney function is severely impaired or even lost completely? We touched on hemodialysis earlier, but are there other options available?
Hemodialysis is a remarkable treatment. It's truly life-saving for people with end-stage renal disease, but it's not a cure. It requires those regular sessions, often several times a week, and it can be a major disruption to a person's life.
It sounds like a challenging process for those who have to go through it.
It can be. That's why kidney transplantation is often seen as the best long-term solution for people with end-stage renal disease.
But finding a compatible donor can be really difficult, right?
It can be. There's a constant shortage of donor organs. However, there are ongoing efforts to increase organ donation rates and develop new technologies. For example, researchers are working on bioartificial kidneys that could one day eliminate the need for transplantation altogether.
Wow. That would be a game changer. So there's hope for the future, even for people facing serious kidney problems. It's incredible to think about how far medical science has come.
It really is. It's an exciting time to be in this field, and I'm optimistic about the future of kidney care.
Well, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive into the world of excretion. We've covered an incredible amount of information, from the inner workings of our kidneys to the fascinating adaptations found in animals across the globe.
We certainly have. I hope you've enjoyed this journey and gained a newfound appreciation for this essential biological process.
I know I have, and I think I'll never take my kidneys for granted again after learning how hard they work to keep me healthy.
I'm right there with you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. A big thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us, and to all of our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the world of excretion. Remember, stay curious, Keep learning and take care of those amazing kidneys. We'll see you next time.